MediaCorp pioneered the development of Singapore's broadcasting industry with radio broadcast in 1936 and television in 1963. Today, MediaCorp reaches 98% of Singaporeans in 4 languages and has a growing Asian audience base through CNA as well as entertainment content distributed across the region. Digitally, CNA content is consumed by an increasing average of about 10 million unique visitors, generating about 73 million page views every month. The channel also reaches more than 81 million households in 29 territories across Asia, the Middle East and Australia. As the largest media business in Singapore, MediaCorp operates 6 television channels and 11 radio stations. They are the only broadcaster providing terrestrial TV across the city-state and island country.
Okay, so let's talk about what happened in 2015 in Singapore. Do you remember?
I remember it was a long process to win the project, a really short period to deliver everything, but that was the fun part.
How much time did we spend on the delivery?
The whole tender went on for a few months. I remember we got the information during NAB. We are expected in Singapore the following week.
Mm-hmm.
We had to organize everything from Vegas and go to Singapore the next week to set up everything, get ready for the shootout, and after that it took a few more trips to win the project. So it was like 30 days from coming to Singapore for the delivery to going on air.
When I got a call from you guys that tonight the radio is going on air, the whole company was excited, like it's gonna be a big step for everyone who was involved, so it was good times.
Yeah, and it was, as we know, it was only the beginning. You know more about this part of the project, right?
Yeah, basically the 2 big steps that were at the beginning was that they had a new campus, so they wanted to move, and the second very important was that they did the modernization of their workflow. And this workflow started from the reporters who are every day out there on the street, all the way to the directors. The plans were very big. I must say that the change, the difference between now and before, it's just really amazing. How did we pull it off? 300 plus concurrent users, which means it's 500-600 of people from different various teams. They have to be trained within 2 months.
Team effort. It happened very often that one day we discussed something, we reported this back to Europe, and by the next day or the day after we had this feature, so we presented them. I think it was really great. Such a short time frame for such a huge project. Each of the channels, each of the teams had a little different idea about their workflow, so a huge task, but I think together with Benchmark, MediaCorp, us, and of course the partners who were involved, for the third-party companies.
So when you guys were there and you went to this new campus and you've seen this landmark now, beautiful building by Maki and Associates, a Japanese architect. So when you saw that, was it like a benchmark, like this is how good Octopus has to be working there? Or
it's always nice to see such a large and successful organization,
and this truly is a flagship. The team that they have a lot of young people who are driving the change, who are not reluctant to really go into full automation and take advantage of the solutions or systems they have. So it was quite successful 6 years, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I believe it's gonna be at least 60 more.
Hi, James. James Hollis is Vice President at MediaCorp. James, could you tell me a little bit about what you handle in MediaCorp?
Yeah, I oversee mainly the technical operations for CNA and our other news on our other language channels. That consists of basically the studio crew, the editing, both the news editing and the current affairs editing, the camera team, and also what we call news production support, which is our engineering support for the news side. So all of the staff that kind of, you know, make the CNA and the our language news go to air, they're supposed under my responsibility, and all the related technical systems. So the studios, the PCRs, the equipment rooms, all the systems that sit there to make the news happen, they all, I suppose, come under my responsibility.
So with this last 15 months or 18 months of the pandemic, what was your most challenging issue?
Wow, where do you start with that one? I mean, look, it's probably similar to what most, you know, broadcasters have had to kind of contend with, but obviously, you know, at the start of the COVID situation, which is what, around last February for us, where we started to look to move our editorial staff to work from home. The biggest challenge there is really giving the editorial producers access to our broadcast system, our key broadcast systems from home. Yes, you know, we'd had basic kind of Citrix connections into maybe our Octopus system, for example. But one of the key elements that was always missing for us was giving the producers the ability to create the MOS objects from home. So that was something we had to fast track and get up and running particularly quickly. Now, obviously, you know, with this, there's a load of cybersecurity issues that we had to contend with as well. You know, but, you know, we worked very quickly and we quickly deployed around 250 laptops to our producers that work from home, where they can now access our key broadcast systems. That includes Octopus, EVS, but also not just access, they can write their scripts, they can add in the MOS elements. So that was key for us, and that was one of the biggest challenge. I mean, at the same time, you know, we had to install, we brought online 4 home studios. Again, it was something we had to, you know, like everybody had to put it up pretty quickly. Some of the challenges there were to do with the getting the prompter from the main studio, because we still had a presenter in the studio. So say, for example, our dual anchored shows, one would now be in the studio at HQ and one would be at home. Obviously syncing those two up, giving the prompter feed to the remote you know, location, to the home studio in a timely manner. You know, who scrolls it, where do we scroll it from, all these kind of things, you know. So, but we got there within a few weeks. We had the majority of our staff working from home, obviously except the studio operation people. You know, obviously we didn't go as far as to move our automation to home as yet. It's still something we kind of look at.
Well, maybe you should write a playbook on this so that next time there's a pandemic, somebody has to dust it off and start using it.
Yeah, definitely.
So what is the most valued feature that you find in Octopus when you use it as a newsroom?
I mean, talking about MOS, actually, it's probably how the MOS elements integrate with Octopus. I mean, for example, because we use Mossart Studio Automation, and how the Mossart templates are embedded into the Octopus templates, that's what makes it really easy for our users to create their stories. You know, having that ability, you know, really streamlined our operation. I mean, that's been kind of, you know, because we moved to Octopus before we moved to automation. Automation only came online about 2 years later. But that was, you know, that functionality is kind of being invaluable in making the, you know, certainly the step to our automation particularly smooth as well.
So talking about innovations, what would you like to see? Where would you like to see the technology go in, let's say, 5 years or 10 years from now for news production?
Again, I mean, it's a tough one, really. I mean, you know, we're always looking at ways to kind of reduce the possibility of errors. So anything that can kind of help with these type of things, whether it's human errors or kind of technical errors. So any improvements to the processes that can help there. I mean, obviously, automation in some respect is supposed to kind of, and it does, you know, reduces I suppose that the complex kind of openers and things can be done much simpler on automation because it's frame accurate day in and day out. So you get an element of reducing kind of any sort of errors. So anything that kind of helps us in that respect is always useful. I would be keen, many vendors now on some of their products are moving to kind of leasing models. That's something which obviously is very much of interest to us as a company, rather than us owning the hardware, owning the software. It's more palatable to us to have that on a leasing kind of subscription based. We do that with some of our hardware and software nowadays, so that would be useful. Cloud-based as well, pushing the cloud-based technology and development for all of our products, which is something we're also kind of looking at now across a lot of our systems. Continued integration across the platforms. We have TV, radio, and digital. They all work very closely together. Anything that can improve the integration across these platforms is, streamline the workflow across these platforms is always useful. And I suppose, AI is always a hot topic, isn't it? What AI can we bring into what would, our workflows? We actually do have a dedicated team now looking at this, what AI we can bring into, our news workflows. So any technology, around there is also, a definite interest to us.
So what is your opinion of security in the cloud? Would it be better than what you have in MediaCorp, or would it be worse?
From a cloud perspective, it potentially depends, how much you spend on the security side of it. There's different levels of how much you can, secure your assets and systems in the cloud. But even on premises, there's high risks. There's still risks there which have to be managed. I honestly think we've got to a stage now where the risks are similar. Maybe they're slightly different, but the risks are similar, and it's just how you manage those risks. We have set up also and brought in specialist people who now look at all of our cybersecurity, whether it's cloud, whether it's on-premises systems. So we have a dedicated team who oversees that now. But look, we cannot, in my opinion, we cannot avoid cloud. We are not avoiding it. We are moving towards it for some of our systems, and we're looking at cloud for more of our systems. One of the key benefits, obviously, is for us is the resilience part of it. Because we can access those systems and assets from anywhere. If anything happens to our main premises, we still have the ability, to function to a certain extent. So it has to be done. I don't think you can avoid going into cloud. You just need to, have the right knowledge and skill set of people who are kind of, building it and developing it for you, which is kind of what we've done. So it's a very hot topic for us at the moment, because we are making some big steps towards cloud for our systems at the moment.
You've got television, you've got radio, you've got digital, you have a 12-story building, you have production crew and editorial staff all over the place. How does Octopus help you bring all of this together, bring all the crew together?
Look, it's obviously important to sync, all of our processes from story creation to the output of the bulletins on various platforms. I think, as I kind of just mentioned, we have TV, radio, digital. They all use, Octopus. Stories are shared across all of the platforms, and they can be tracked easily, kind of, moving from place to place. So, it's obviously a benefit to us to have all of this information, all of our scripts, all of our data, all of our, asset information located on one central system. And it works well for us. The stories are, to be honest, the majority of our stories are created by our English output, mainly due to the number of staff they have compared to our languages. And a lot of those stories are then shared with all the other languages and platforms. Obviously, sometimes have to go through some sort of translation. But yeah, it's very common for us to have this centralized kind of system, which is, accessed by all of our platforms.
You have equipment from manufacturers from all over the world. Singapore doesn't make too much broadcast equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And so how much of a value do you see in the local, either system integrators or the representatives of the manufacturers in their ability to be on site as opposed to remotely supporting you?
I mean, look, even before the COVID situation, we always saw value, and would always attempt to have, vendors come down to site if we had any sort of technical issues, Yes, remote can work in certain aspects. But again, sometimes you've got to get over the cybersecurity problem of that. But we just find it better, cooperation and, teamwork if we get the vendor to come down to our office. As you just said, most of our systems are not manufactured in Singapore. We have had instances in the past 18 months where we've had to fly people in from overseas because some of our systems, again, were manufactured overseas. And, you're waiting, weeks and weeks to get approval for them to fly. Then they come in and they're quarantined. So during this period, it's even been more important to have, local vendors. But it's always something. I mean, aside to COVID, as I said at the beginning, it's always been important to us. It's just been even more important during this period where travel has been restricted.
That's right. So what do you see as MediaCorp's future, next 5 years, 10 years? Where do you see MediaCorp going?
But, some of it goes back to what we just talked about. I mean, cloud being a big one. We're only just making our first steps into cloud. We've waited and waited, because of the cybersecurity concerns, but we feel now it's sufficient. So we'll see a lot more cloud-based systems that we're using. IP-based, obviously, we're still running kind of baseband and video, so we do need to move over to IP-based. We mentioned it already again, AI, we've got a dedicated team looking at AI. The working remotely, I mean, is for us, I don't think is ever going to end now. We will even if the new norm goes back to the old norm, we will still, we'll still retain in place the working remotely to some extent, because we do realize now that it does improve our resilience. So we will, still have some of our production kind of work from home. And some other things, I've mentioned a few times as well, we are very active on our resilience building, whether that's resilience to cyber attacks or any other side of, type of attacks. That's something we do put a lot of effort and value in is maintaining, continuing our operation if something happens. We do put a lot of time and effort into that because, we don't ever really want to go off air. So, there's and there'll be more done with that over the next few years. And I think, as I mentioned, I also mentioned earlier, the continued integration of our platforms. We're always looking for tools and workflow. So it's always looking for tools to improve our editorial workflow. Anything that can make the producer's job better and easier. More streamlined, quicker. That's something we're continually looking at. So that's some of the key things. I mean, there's obvious ones like 4K. I mean, we do a certain amount of current affairs production in 4K. Look, it's nothing new, but our news operation at the moment is still running, HD. But we're making steps towards, that as well. We now have bonded cellular devices that run over 4K. So, but for news operation, there's always that question mark. Is it worth, news being in 4K? Of course, sports, entertainment, documentaries, absolutely, which we already do. But on the news side, we're still kind of playing with it.
So you guys moved to Octopus in 2015. So that's about 6 years ago. How do you think it's impacted the life of the journalist and the producer?
I mean, firstly, obviously, they had to adapt to a new system, which I think is always challenging. Particularly when you don't change these type of systems often. Your NRCS generally stays in place for a lengthy amount of time, so people get very comfortable with the system. So obviously they had to adapt to that. You know, I mean, for those who were kind of very used, embedded in the old system, you know, there was some kind of unlearning that they had to do to adapt to the new one. But ultimately, you know, we moved because, you know, we wanted to see improvements, and those improvements are really to streamline our workflows. You know, and as we mentioned a few times, the integration across platforms, that was a very key kind of, you know, functionality for us. And thankfully, though, we did the move to Octopus 2 years before our move to Mossart Automation. You know, which was kind of a planned, phased attack at moving our news production over from, you know, a different, into a new NRCS and then into our automation 2 years later. So, but overall, you know, it's been very smooth. Both of those transitions to the new NRCS and over to our automation were both smooth, and that's really due to, I suppose, the ease and simplicity of using the system, really.
Would you say that Octopus is crucial for collaboration between your multiple languages and your digital and TV channels and radio channels?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, we share scripts, you know, all the time. I mean, you know, we run multiple TV channels, radio, digital, and a lot of the stories are shared across all of the platforms. I mean, I think as I mentioned earlier, the majority of our stories are created in English. You know, because that's, I suppose, where the biggest kind of staffing is to create those. But after that, the majority of these move over to our language productions or over to radio. There'll be some translation at some point. But, you know, we couldn't do that as well. We couldn't do it as easily without, you know, without the collaboration that can happen on the Octopus system, I suppose.
Well, thank you very much, James. That was very illuminating, and we're happy to hear that MediaCorp is doing very well with this Octopus and with the rest of the systems. And we look forward to talking to you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.